10:11 is the time. Stocks surge after Trump's triumph. It turns out that President Donald Trump may not be bad for the stock market after all. Asian stock markets tumbled shortly after the financial event and the first meeting. U.S. stocks rallied the rest of the day, lifting the Dow Jones Industrial Average within 50 points of a record high close. He took on a remarkably conciliatory posture, said Eric Wiegand, senior portfolio manager at the Private Client Reserve at U.S. Bank. That went a long way to demonstrating, perhaps for the first time or very few times, his presidential disposition and gave a greater sense of calm. That's what had an early reprieve in the markets. The Dow ultimately climbed 257 points, or 1.4%, to 18,590. The average was briefly up 317 points. The S&P gained 23.7 points, or 1.1%. Wall Street had largely seen Clinton as more likely to maintain the status quo while viewing Trump policies as less clear. Investor anxiety ratcheted up in recent weeks as the race tightened, leading to a 9-day slump for the market that ended Monday. By Election Day, the market had mostly bounced back and priced in a Clinton win. On Wednesday, faced with President-elect Trump, traders piled into healthcare and financial stocks, sectors seen as likely to struggle under a Clinton administration. They also sold off safe haven stocks like utilities and consumer-focused companies. Financial companies led the gainers, surging 4.1%. Banks and other financial stocks tend to benefit from higher interest rates and less government regulation. Healthcare companies climbed 3.4%. The sector has taken a beating this year, reflecting in part fears that a Clinton presidency would lead to curbs on drug pricing increases that could hurt drug makers and biotechnology companies. Here's Jack.
Very good, Bill. Here's some news about the vitamin D. To be more exact, doctors are warning about vitamin D again, and it's not that we need more news you might expect. Instead, they say there's too much and too many people taking too many pills for a problem that few people truly have. The nutrient is crucial for strong bones and may play a role in other health conditions, though that is far less certain. Misunderstandings about the recommended amount of vitamin D have led to misinterpretation of blood tests, and many people thinking they need more than they really do. Some experts who help set the levels right in today's New England Journal of Medicine. Correctly interpreted, less than 6% of Americans ages 1 to 70 are deficient, and only 13% are in danger of getting enough. That's concerning, but these levels of deficiency do not constitute a pandemic, the authors say, yet people may think there is one. Blood tests for vitamin D levels not advised unless a problem such as bone loss is suspected or soaring. Under Medicare, there was an 83-fold increase from 2000 to 2010 to 8.7 million tests last year at $40 each. It's Medicare's fifth most common test, just after cholesterol levels and ahead of blood sugar, urinary tract infection, and prostate cancer screening. I'm not sure when it got popular to check everybody for vitamins D deficiency, but patients often ask for it, especially baby boomers, said Dr. Kenny Lynn, who is a Georgetown University physician and preventive medicine expert. Use of vitamin D pills also grew from 5% of Americans in 1999 to 19% in 2012. To many reports suggesting harm from too little of the so-called sunshine vitamins, that because our skin makes vitamin D from the sun. We're not saying that moderate dose supplements are risky, but more is not necessarily better. And high doses can do harm, said Dr. Manson of Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston. She and several other advisors to the Institute of Medicine, which set the RDA, or recommended dietary allowance, say the journal article, people vary biologically in how much of any vitamin they need. The Institute estimated that by comparing intake and blood levels with measures of bone health, it estimated that as on average, people need about 400 international units of vitamin D per day, 600 for people over 70. To be safe and ensure that everyone gets enough, they set the RDA at the high end of the spectrum of the population's needs, 600 to 800 units, depending on how old the person is. So by definition, nearly everyone's true requirement is below that. Many people and their doctors regard the RDA and its corresponding blood levels as a threshold that everyone needs to be above. According to the authors, as a result, people often are told they are inadequate or deficient in vitamin D, in fact, when they really aren't. Here's some news from Phoenix. It's really good news in my estimation. Their sheriff down there, he finally lost his job. He was a brute. He really was. He would go into neighborhoods, with 200 or 300 homes, and just take them all out and take them down to jail. These were the Mexicans who had gone from their country into our country. This is what it says. The man who styled himself as America's toughest sheriff lost his job in the election on Tuesday. Maricopa County Sheriff Joe Arpaio was defeated in his bid for a 7th consecutive term by his Democratic challenger, Paul Penzoni, who is a 21-year veteran police officer. Arpaio had trailed in some polls by double digits. Arpaio took office in 1993 after he retired from the Drug Enforcement Administration. So that's my news so far.
Thank you, Jack. From Lackawanna, New York, bulb sparks a massive steel mill fire. This is unbelievable, where they use so much heat anyway. Lackawanna, New York. More than 100 firefighters struggled to contain a massive blaze at a former Bethlehem steel site that is believed to have broken out early Wednesday when a hot light bulb fell onto cardboard inside the business, authorities said. Fred Heinley, the director of development for the city of Lackawanna, told reporters the fire started early Wednesday when the bulb fell on some combustibles inside the sprawling building that houses several businesses at the industrial site just south of Buffalo. Authorities said later that the official cause was still under investigation. TV news footage showed the 6-block-long building engulfed in flames as massive clouds of black smoke billowed away from nearby homes, and video images showed the roof of the building collapsing. And the Iran nuclear deal could collapse. The future of the historic nuclear agreement with Iran is in the air, with the prospect that a Donald Trump administration could take steps that would cause Iran to abandon its commitments, experts said Wednesday. Some characterized Trump's election as a death knell for the deal, which was reached in 2014 and put into effect in January. It imposes limits on Iran's nuclear program and its ability to build atomic weapons for at least 10 years in exchange for lifting most international sanctions. I think it's basically the end game for the deal, said Richard Nephew, a Columbia University professor who was the lead sanctions expert on the U.S. negotiating team. It is very hard for me to see, based on the rhetoric, letting it stand as is or not doing something that forces the Iranians to walk away. Time is 10:20, and here's Jack.
10:20, we go from national and international news to local and state news. Starting with this particular article, it's, I'll read it. The record number of Nebraskans who cast ballots in Tuesday's election will likely land somewhere near the voter turnout percentages seen in the previous 2 presidential elections. More than 2/3, some 68% or more, than 831,000 registered voters cast ballots, according to unofficial results. Statewide, turnout for the Barack Obama-John McCain election was a record 70% back in 2008. It was 69% for the Obama-Mitt Romney race 4 years later. Nebraska Secretary of State John Gale said he was hopeful that the counting of thousands of provisional and early voting ballots in county courthouses across the state in coming days would push the turnout percentage ahead of the year 2012 percentage. We added 75,000 voters to the rolls in the last year and a half, and now it's tough to move. The turnout percentage is very high. A record 1,200,000 people are registered to vote here in Nebraska. Gale said strong early voting trends and the high number of registered voters created optimism in his office. At one time, that 850 to 860,000 Nebraskans would vote in this week's election. That would have represented roughly a 72% turnout. We're always hopeful, he said. We try to be the cheerleaders for democracy. In the Omaha-dominated 2nd Congressional District, the unofficial total number of votes cast in the election between Clinton and Trump topped 269,000. Douglas County Election Commissioner Brian Cruz said he expects to add about 10,000 more votes to this year's total after provisional and mail ballots that arrived on Tuesday are counted. They are estimated at 11 to 12,000. Katie White's coordinator of Warren Buffett's Drive to Vote campaign said organizers were working to determine how many voters were taken to the polls. White said she was thrilled with the volunteer turnout and touched the metro area transit offered free bus service on election day. Organizers heard that from many people who rode the bus, she said. Buffett, who rode Ollie the trolley, took 13 voters to the polls. Gale said his office doesn't keep records on turnout by the demographic groups, but that 89 of the state's 93 counties top 60% voter participation. That crosses all demographic ages, genders, occupation, rural, urban, he said. That's a very encouraging sign. That's really good news. Cruz had predicted a 70% voter turnout in Douglas County. Before provisional ballots are added, nearly 227,000 cast ballots in the county. Suffolk County Election Commissioner Wayne Benna predicted a 73% turnout. Vote totals released on Wednesday show some 73% of the county's registered voters. 5 lightly populated rural counties, Arthur, Blaine, Grant, Kaya, and Logan, each top 80%. 80%. Thurston County recorded the lowest turnout among the 93 counties at only 41%. Bill?
Thank you, Jack. From the Journal Star, here is Cindy Lang Kubik's column, and she says, we decided anyone was better than Hillary Rodham Clinton. We decided it didn't matter. It didn't matter if Donald Trump bragged about sexually assaulting women or dishonored a Gold Star family or smeared a judge of Mexican descent or refused to release his tax returns or didn't pay his contractors or his pollster. We decided it didn't matter if he stereotyped Muslims or Hispanics or blacks or poked fun at a disabled reporter, declared climate change a Chinese hoax, or called for jailing his Democratic opponent. We decided it didn't matter. He filed for business bankruptcy 6 times, married 3 times, inherited his wealth from his father, never held a public office, couldn't seem to put a cogent sentence together without a teleprompter. We decided it didn't matter if he had the temperament of a 2-year-old, the attention span of a housefly, the worldview of a cave dweller. We decided we were sick of politics as usual, and the rich candidate with the populist slogan was going to save us. We decided anyone was better than Hillary Clinton. So Tuesday night, we elected a gossamer-haired narcissist who admires Vladimir Putin, builds gold-gilded towers, and spent 14 years firing contestants on a game show to be the next president of the U.S. And the sun came up on Wednesday morning. No one claimed a rigged election, and the 59,450,907 Americans who voted Donald Trump into our highest office are giddy, seeing hopes on the horizon and a wall on our southern border. Those of us who voted with our daughters and for our daughters woke up to realize our sisters, not our black sisters, but our white sisters, voted for Trump in large numbers. We realized the pundits were wrong and the polls were wrong, and some of us were wrong about what we thought we were, a great land of opportunity for all. That lie has been hung out to dry, but there was more to the rise of Trump than the simple economics and simmering political frustration. This was white lash, Dan Jones said on CNN as Trump closed in on victory. This was a white lash against a changing country. That is not hyperbole. Even if those of us whose skin colors protects us from Trump's hate deny that it is, there will be weeks of spin and speculation, and no one will know exactly what a Trump presidency might mean. The sky isn't falling, and the stock market is up. We haven't banned Muslims yet, but all over America, people of Middle Eastern descent are wondering how safe they are. Mexican-American children are afraid to go to school. African-Americans who boosted Clinton with 88% of their collective vote wonder what comes next. Same-sex couples worry about their marriages. Pro-choice advocates worry about the Supreme Court. Transgender citizens see a Trump presidency as a gateway to discrimination. Trump himself was conciliatory in his acceptance speech, urging the nation to come together, tempering the rhetoric that won him the support of white nationalists and the Triple K. It was a surreal night at the end of a surreal election. The night before the vote, I drove across town to see my 2-year-old grandson, and before I left, I reminded my son to visit his polling place. He promised he would. Then he held his little boy in the doorway to say goodbye. Can you believe James will grow up never knowing what it's like to have a white man as president? I laughed. But I drove home half believing it, full of hope for this crazy quill of a country that welcomed my immigrant ancestors to its shores and opened its arms to millions more, including our next First Lady. It's not funny anymore. The glass ceiling feels unbreakable once again. Bigotry feels like a new family value. But love still trumps hate in my head and my heart, and I plan to follow the lead of the woman who won the popular vote on Tuesday. Let us have faith in each other. Let us not grow weary. Let us not lose heart. For there are more reasons to come, and there is more work to do, and that still matters. Here's Jen.
Very good, Bill. Here's some news. School board in Ralston. Tight school board races in Ralston and Elkhorn came down to the wire. Ralston School Board member Mike Overkamp came to grips with what he thought was a loss when he went to bed early Wednesday morning. He called fellow incumbents Linda Richards and Jeff Sedan, the president and the vice president of the board, and congratulated them on their win. But he woke up to a different set of updated Douglas County election results on Wednesday, which showed voters giving Richards, who's a newcomer Heather Johnson, and him the edge for the 3 open seats on the board. It was kind of a weird situation, he said. Results are still unofficial, and a small number of votes separate him and the 4th place finisher Sedan. There's still a chance Sedan could pull ahead, Overkamp said, and that's okay. We have a really great board. Overkamp was appointed to the board in July and said he's looking forward to tackling one of the biggest issues facing Ralston, namely school funding. The learning community common levy is ending, and districts are waiting to see how state aid shakes out. About 1/3 of Ralston's students are opt in from outside the district. It was also a nail biter in Elkhorn, where votes were close among the 4 candidates competing for 3 seats. Ultimately, newcomer Renee Volke and incumbents Aaron A. Clark and John Marasco were the highest vote getters. Volk, who is a longtime school volunteer, said she's ready to hit the ground running. She's already scheduled meetings with key school administrators next week. I'm really looking forward to it, she said. It's something I wanted to do for a while now, so to see all my hard work come to fruition, I'm excited. And 2-term incumbent Ron Riggle was unseated. He was a little disappointed in its results, but said the board is well equipped to keep steering high-achieving Elkhorn in the right direction. It's like anything else. Change is always tough, he said. I'm going to miss it. And here's some news from Lincoln about the pipeline. 3 opponents of the Dakota Access Pipeline will plead not guilty to trespassing charges today, arguing that what's called a climate emergency justified their action. Heather Pearson of Logan, Emma Stewart of Rockwell City, Iowa, and Mahmoud Fidel of Omaha were among 8 protesters arrested on October 29th. The initial appearance of those arrested is scheduled for 9:30 this morning in Calhoun County, Iowa, Magistrate Court. One of the 5 others has already pleaded guilty. The remaining 4 will enter pleas at the hearing. Ed Fallon, who's director of Bold, Iowa, and said in a press release that the trio are prepared to bring expert witnesses on climate change to justify their actions to halt the near $3.8 billion of pipeline, which would carry oil from North Dakota to a refinery in Illinois. Fallon said 3 will also argue that they had written permission from the landowner to protest on the property. Bill?
Thank you, Jack. From the Journal Star, no details on plans for death penalty. The inevitable questions about what's next now that the death penalty has been restored in Nebraska came up Wednesday. But Governor Pete Ricketts and Attorney General Doug Peterson only repeated what they've been saying for a while. Ricketts, reporting in from Xi'an, China, where he is on a trade mission, said he would work with Peterson on protocol options to carry out executions. Peterson said his responsibility would be to advise the governor and the Department of Correctional Services on the constitutional standards that would have to be applied to any protocol or process. He and the department are evaluating protocols and are aware several states, including Oklahoma, have had their protocols evaluated by the United States Supreme Court. Those will be the ones that will most likely be the ones that we will consider, he said. Nebraska has had a 3-drug protocol since 2009 that includes sodium thiopental, pancuronium bromide to paralyze, and potassium chloride to stop the heart. 2 of those, sodium thiopental and pancuronium bromide, have been difficult in recent years for the state to procure. Peterson would not give a timeline for when any decision on a protocol, if it is changed, would be made. And he would not say if he would recommend considering a shield law for pharmacies or a law that would help make the protocol secret. Any process would include an opportunity for public input before final approval. Tuesday's election restored the death penalty by a 61% to 39% vote of the people, which repealed it in 2015. 10:34. Here's Jack.
10:34, the clock says. Hey, that's very good, very good. We're moving on there, Bill.
Yes, we are.
Some news about some troopers of Nebraska returning from North Dakota. 11 Nebraska troopers deployed October 23rd to help clear protesters from the path of a controversial oil pipeline in North Dakota. They have now returned to the state. The troopers were sent at the request of the state of North Dakota as part of a multi-state compact that requires Nebraska to provide aid if it can spare the personnel. Earl Imler, who coordinates the compact for the Nebraska Emergency Management Agency, said Nebraska also deployed an airplane and 2 pilots to the protest site, which is just north of the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation along the Missouri River. Under terms of the compact, the requesting state, in this case North Dakota, picks up the cost of such deployments. The Nebraska troopers who returned on Tuesday were among a multi-state law enforcement force that clashed October 27th with protesters on property owned by the pipeline. 142 protesters were arrested. Pepper spray and non-lethal beanbag shots were used to clear the protesters. Some law enforcement officers were treated for minor injuries, but Nebraska's troopers were not among them, according to Deb Collins, who is a spokesman for the Nebraska State Patrol. Native Americans and environmentalists have flocked to North Dakota in recent months to protest the Dakota Access Pipeline, which they maintain threatens drinking water supplies and desecrates sacred sites. Supporters of the $4 billion pipeline project said it will be a safer and less expensive way to ship oil from North Dakota's Bacon oil fields to a refinery in Illinois. Protests against the pipeline, which crosses Iowa, have also led to arrests in northwest Iowa's Crawford County. And a little more news here. This comes from Ralston. Oh, no, I read that one. There's the one right below. No, I read both of them. I'll stop.
Okay. Former superintendent is guilty of theft. A former Santee Community School superintendent on Tuesday pleaded guilty to a charge he stole $314,000 from a federal program between 2010 and 2013, according to court documents. U.S. Magistrate Judge Cheryl Zwart set Paul D. Sellon's case for sentencing in February, when he will face up to 10 years in prison and a $250,000 fine in connection with the theft. Sellon was a superintendent for the Santee-based school district on the Santee Sioux Reservation from 2010 to 2014, according to a plea agreement. During that time, the school district received annual school improvement grant funding through the stimulus package passed by President Barack Obama. The agreement said Sellon contracted with Mastery Learning and Achievement, paying $683,000 in funds from the grant to the company he had worked with when he was superintendent of other districts in Nebraska, Iowa, and South Dakota. In the other districts, Sellon didn't require the contractor to pay him a portion of the proceeds, the agreement said. But as a precondition to being hired in Santee, Sellon told MLA it needed to pay him a portion of the money it received for its service, the agreement said. Company officials told investigators they believed the company wouldn't get a contract unless they paid the money to Sellon as he directed, the agreement said. All told, $314,121 were paid to Sellon through two businesses he owned with his wife, the agreement said. Federal prosecutors filed the charge at the 33-minute hearing Tuesday afternoon at the Robert V. Denny Federal Building and U.S. Courthouse in Lincoln. Sellon appeared with his attorney, Carlos Monzon, and told the judge he received money in checks or wire transfers and that he knew he was embezzling from the government. In exchange for his plea, prosecutors agreed not to file charges against his wife. Santee Community Schools named Carol Rim, most recently an employee of the Nebraska Department of Education, to lead the district in July. Here's Jack.
Very good. Little news here about the open enrollment that's in place right now. After decades as a healthcare provider, Dr. Phil Smith now is more focused on being a healthcare consumer. Smith retired this summer from his roles as medical director of the Nebraska Biocontainment Patient Care Unit and professor in the University of Nebraska Med Center's College of Public Health. Retirement required him to transition from employer-based health insurance to Medicare. Smith, who's 69, and his wife Sherry, who's 66, had medications on their 2016 prescription drug plan that weren't covered by the 2017 version, which would have made them responsible for paying the full cost of their medications. After reviewing their prescription plan options with someone from Volunteers Assisted Group, Seniors Group, the Smiths found a new plan that will cover their medication that costs them some $5,600 less a year than their 2016 plan costs. Medicare open enrollment, which started in mid-December and runs through December 7th, allows people with Medicare to review and change their health plan and prescription drug plan, which is called Part D, that coverage, making sure it's the best option for them. According to Sue Fredericks, who's the volunteer group's executive director, Smith said it's critical that people on Medicare review their plans. Year to year, plan to plan, the cost of coverage will be quite different, he said. Volunteers Assisting Seniors, which is a nonprofit senior health insurance information program, has answered questions for people regarding their Medicare plans for close to 40 years. During open enrollment, the group's volunteers offer free reviews of plans in Douglas, Sarpy, Cass, Dodge, and counties in Nebraska. Reviewing the best plan on Medicare's website, medicare.gov, can be a confusing process. People sometimes have trouble navigating the site, while others simply may not be comfortable with computers. Seniors who fail to review their plan, she said, sometimes choose to stop taking their medications because they no longer can afford them. And then there's a list of maybe 4 or 5 different places that people that are eligible for Medicare can go to. For example, today, there's a place at the Eastern Nebraska Veterans Home, which is located on 12505 South 40th in Bellevue. Is open from 9 this morning until 1 o'clock this afternoon. And on Saturday, Volunteers Assisting Seniors, which is the name of the group, at approximately on Pacific Street at about, not Pacific Street, 40th Street, and about 40th and Pacific Street. On Monday, Goodwill, which is located at 4805 North 72nd Street. You can go there from 9 in the morning to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. On Wednesday, Metropolitan Community College, located in Fremont. You can go there from 10 till 2. On November 18th, the Metropolitan Community College on 204th and West Dodge Road from 9 till 2 o'clock in the afternoon. On December 2nd, December 2nd, VAS, I'm not what I had no idea what that means, but anyway, you can go to out there at County Hospital, which is located at the same place on Pacific Street and 42nd Pacific approximately. Go there from 9 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon. And that's the news from the Medicare Open Enrollment Plan for seniors.
Thank you, Jack. The tennis time, 10:43. I guess maybe we should start with the
We can move on to obituaries, can't we? Yeah.
Okay, so here are the deaths and funerals from the Journal Star. And the first is Ebelbeck, Glennis L. Ebelbeck of Hebron, born October 1926, passed away November 8th, age 90. Brower, John Henry Brower, age 92 of Geneva, died November 8th, born April 1924 in Geneva. Memorials in lieu of flowers to St. Jude's Children's Hospital or Geneva Rescue, and Farmer and Sons Funeral Home is listed. Sorry. Collingham, Homer C. Collingham, born July 1921, passed away November 7th. Homer was a World War II veteran. Memorial suggested to the family for later designation, and Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home is handler. Dixon, Letty Oreen Dixon of Plattsmouth, born August 20, 1925, passed away November 7th, age 91. Gettemeiler, Goettemoeller, Gettemeiler. Jeffrey D., age 44 of Lincoln, passed away November 6th. Memorials are suggested to the St. Vincent de Paul Society, and the arrangements are by Botheris Mazer and Love Funeral Home. Murphy, Marilyn Murphy of Rouleau, born November 1932, passed away November 8th, age 84. Newsham, Newsham, Nola Jean Newsham, age 91 of Lincoln, passed away November 3rd. In lieu of flowers, memorials may be directed to the First United Methodist Church or Eastmont Towers, and Waiuka Funeral Home is handling. Sutliff, Roger L. Sutliff, age 72, passed away November 8th, born June 1944 in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Memorial contributions can be made to the family. Funeral home on that is Roper and Sons. Talley, Talley, Jean K., maiden name Barney. Jean Talley, age 92, formerly a Friend, passed away November 7th, born July 1924 in rural Friend. And that's Lobermore Funeral Home, Friend. Vanek, Verna, they called her T.W. Vanek, born October 1923, passed away November 9th at the age of 93. Memorials to the Juvenile Diabetes Association and arrangements by Botheris Mazer and Love Funeral Home. Wailage, Weilage, Raymond L. Wailage, a junior, age 78, formerly of Crete, passed away November 7th in Hastings. Memorials in care of the family for future designation, and Kunkel Funeral Home in Crete is listed. Excuse me. Brand, Kai, that's Kai, Myron Brand, age 88, of Fontanelle, died November 7th. Memorials to the Salem Lutheran Church, the Hooper Care Center, or the Dodge County 4-H Foundation, and Ludvigson Mortuary Chapel, Fremont, is handling. Chapman, Garv Leroy Chapman of Lander, Wyoming, born December 1936, passed away November 2nd, age 79. Crawford, Darcy Ann Stacy Crawford of Lincoln, passed away October 14th. A celebration of life from 2 to 7 p.m. Sunday, November 13th at the Fireman's Hall in Lincoln. Crawford, Harvey Crawford of Oak Hills, Florida, died November 7th. Fangmeyer, Laureen H.V. Fangmeyer, age 91, of Crete, passed away November 7th. Memorials to St. John Lutheran Church, and the funeral home is Kunkel Funeral Home. Franson, Franson, James P. Franson, age 62, passed away November 3rd in Lincoln. The Colonial Chapel Funeral Home is handling the arrangements. And memorials in lieu of flowers to the Boy Scouts of America, Heartland Chapter. Hoffman, spelled Hoffmann, William A., they called him Bill Hoffman, age 60, of Sutton, passed away November 5th. Bill was born June 1956 in Henderson. Memorial contributions may be directed to the Sutton FFA alumni or the Sutton Community Home Foundation towards the building of a new nursing home, a community project that Bill was excited to see completed. And the Sutton Memorial is listed. Keedy, Betty J. Keedy Dawson, born February 1928, passed away November 8th, age 88. Klepper, Klepper. Kenneth G. Klepper, age 78, of Waco, died November 7th. He was born April 1938 in York, and he was a United States Army veteran. That's Volsky Funeral Home, Seward. The last is Creason, spelled Kriesen, Stephen C. Creason, age 29, passed away November 6th in Waverly, born October 1987 in Honolulu, Hawaii. Memorial contributions can be made to the family for future designation, and Roper and Sons is the funeral home. Those are the deaths and funerals in the Lincoln Journal-Star.
And here are the obituaries from the Omaha World Herald. Bunz, spelled B-U-N-Z, Irma Bunz, age 95, of Bennington, Nebraska. The Haddon, the Haddon Golden Brit Mortuary in Bennington is handling the services for her. Memorials may be made to the church or to the Bennington Fire and Rescue Squad. Butterfield, Betty June Butterfield, age 90. The West Lawn Hillcrest Funeral Home is in charge of the arrangements. Cox, Kelly Sue, my name is Anderson. Cox, age 52, of Orlando. Family Funeral Care in Orlando, Florida, is handling the funeral arrangements. In lieu of flowers, the family invites you to please consider making a donation to the Humane Society in her memory. Or memorials can also be made to the family. Davis, Jack B. Davis, age 88. Ephraim Hoffman is in charge at the Bel Air Chapel. Dukes, Michael P. Dukes, age 60. Ephraim Hoffman, Bel Air Chapel is in charge. Earl, Norma Jean Earl, age 76. Again, Ephraim Hoffman, Bel Air Chapel is in charge of the arrangements. Elsesser, Elsasser, David M. Elsesser, age 28. The Cariscal Arkansas Scabious Funeral Home is in charge. Memorials may be made to the charity of your choice. Foster, Rosemary Foster, age 78. Ephraim Hoffman, Bel Air Chapel is in charge. Memorials may be made to the St. Joan of Arc Church. Foster, Thomas R. Foster, age 71. Ephraim Hoffman, Bel Air Chapel is in charge. Memorials may be made to the American Diabetes Association or the American Heart Association. Harnack, Betty Marie Harnack, age 92. The Heritage Memory Mortuary, located in Prescott, Arizona, is in charge of the arrangements. So it says over here, let me see, that's all there is as far as the news is concerned about that. Harrington, Jeanette L. Harrington, age 55. So a gentleman is in charge. Memorials may be made to St. Jude. Hendrickson, Dennis William Henderson, age 68. Hoffman, Bel Chapel is in charge of the funeral arrangements. Memorials may be directed to the family. Rupsky, spelled Hrubsky. Scott E. Rupsky, age 48. Commercial Watkins Staskevich Funeral Home is in charge, and memorials may be made to the family for the charities of your choice. Isaacson, Guy B. Isaacson, age 52. The Water Mortuary is in charge of the funeral arrangements. Next obituary, Jaros, spelled Jaros, James T. Jaros, age 87. Memorials may be made to the Evangelical Free Church in Green Valley, Arizona. Let me see, there's no mortuary given. There'll be a graveside service this coming Saturday at 11 o'clock in the morning at the West Lawn Hillcrest Memorial Park here in Omaha. This is located at 5710 Center Street. Johnson, Gerald C. Johnson, age 78. Crosby, Burkett, Swanson, Golden Colonial Chapel is in charge of the arrangements. Memorials may be made to St. Paul Lutheran Church. Kadafy, spelled Kadavy. Gary J. Kadafy, age 60. Memorials may be made to the American Lung Association. And Heath Hoffman is in charge of the arrangements at the Bel Air Chapel. Knutson, Joyce N. Knutson, age 81. The Cutler O'Neill Meyer Woodring Funeral Home is located, is the mortuary in charge, and that's in Council Bluffs. Memorials are also suggested to the Camp Koholu, which is a summer camp for kids with cancer. So if you want to get memorials, again, you can send it to the Koholu Summer Camp for Kids. Next obituary, Larry L. Lange, it might be just Lang, Lange, age 66 of Omaha. The Bremen Mortuary at their 72nd Street Chapel is in charge. Okay. Lawler, Philip E. Lawler, age 93. The Bethany Funeral Home is handling the funeral arrangements. Memorials are requested to the Bethany Lutheran Church or to the Salvation Army. Marshall, Jean Yako Kido, and it's in parentheses. So the last name is Marshall, the first name is Jean, and the rest of the name is Yako, spelled Yaeko, and then in parentheses it's Kido. She was born in Glendale, California. The gentleman is handling the funeral arrangements. Okay, the next obituary, Mason, Myron L. Mason, age 58. The Thomas Funeral Home is handling the funeral arrangements. Mitzlaff, I'll spell that Mitzlaff. Susan C., known as Kinger. Mitzlaff, age 90. Heath Hoffman at their Benton Street office, or Benton Street Chapel, is in charge. Pellerito, LSM Pellerito, I'll spell the last name, Pellrito, E-R-I-T-O. Alice M. Pellerito, age 82. Ethan Hoffman, Ballard Chapel, is handling the arrangements and memorials can be made to the American Our Queen Catholic Church. Pensick, Patrick P. Pensick, age 51, of Omaha. The Rick Muth Funeral Home is in charge, and memorials are suggested to the family. Quigley, Larry Dean Quigley, age 86. Memorials are suggested to the Jose Harper Hospice House or the charity of your choice. Heavy Hoffman is in charge at their Bel Air Chapel. Heather Marie Roberts, age 37. The Richmond Funeral Home is in charge, and the memorial is made to one of her two favorite charities. First one being Leap for a Cure in care of Methodist Hospital Foundation, or the Omaha Rescue. Let me see. Omaha or the Great Plains Pointer Rescue Squad, which is located at 9704 Lewis Drive. The next obituary, Robertson, Jed A. Robertson, age 76. Ethan Hoffman, Bel Air Chapel, is handling the arrangements. Rush, Tammy M. Rush, age 38. Belleville Memorial Chapel of Ethan Hoffman is in charge. Memorials are suggested at the Omaha Public School Foundation. Shear, Michael Aiken, Shear, age 42. Ethan Hoffman, Bel Air Chapel, is in charge, and memorials may be made to the Michael Aiken Shear Foundation. Toberer, Tober, Susan C. Toberer, age 70. Evie Hoffman at their Bel Air Chapel is in charge. Williams Saerun, spelled S-A-E-R-U-N, which is her first name. Saerun S. Williams, age 56. Evie and Hoffman is in charge at their at their Benton Street Chapel. Wolf, Edward Wolf, age 38. Evie Hoffman is in charge at their Bel Air Chapel. And those are all of the obituaries today from the Omaha World Herald.
Thank you, Jack. Listeners' memorials to the Radio Talking Book Network are tax deductible and will go a long way in keeping Radio Talking Book on the air. Please keep Radio Talking Book in mind when memorials are listed as donor's choice or your favorite charity. Donations should be sent to Radio Talking Book Network, 7101 Newport Avenue, Suite 205, Omaha, Nebraska 68152. Thank you for being a Radio Talking Book Network listener and supporter. Jack and I will be right back. We hope that you will be too. And here's Paul.
And thank you very much, Bill Eberhard and Jack Gibbs, for reading the first hour from the Omaha World Herald and the Lincoln Journal-Star.
Right on the button there. 11 o'clock.
Oh,
Right on the button.
well, we're good. We should have been candidates if we're that good.
We should be eligible for the big money.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, good. What are we doing here? Now we got the today's editorials, don't we?
Christmas ham is white beans, Harvard cake, cornbread muffin with margarine, hot cinnamon apples, and a pint of 1% milk.
And as I said a moment ago, you can hear the home delivery menus each and every weekday at about this time on the Radio Talking Book Network in Nebraska. Another thing you can hear now is Profile America. This comes to us from the U.S. Census Bureau. Here is Profile America for today.
Oh, we have music now.
Snazzy.
November is designated every year as National Diabetes Month. The goal is to make the public more aware of the serious nature of the disease and how
Kevin
to
moved
detect
along.
and control it.
The kid that was
When our bodies are unable to maintain
Was
a
kind of
normal blood
filling in.
sugar
Oh, yeah,
level,
he-
many
oh,
complications
Council Bluffs.
follow, including kidney failure. The
Yeah, I think he thought he might have found a niche here and then
Diabetes in the U.S. is on the rise, and some public health experts even refer to it as an epidemic fueled by our unhealthy
the
lifestyle.
office for the city.
Yeah, that's what I understood too. He's going to be the circulation
Yeah.
Insulin is one product
manager or
that more
something
than
like
12
that. Yeah.
establishments in the
Nice guy.
$136 billion per year business of
Yeah, pretty
manufacturing
good kid, I
pharmaceuticals
thought.
in
Yeah.
preparation. You can find more facts about Americans.
I think everybody else I hired were women, weren't they?
Survey at Nielsen.gov.
We're the minority.
It might have something to do with salary.
With what?
With salary.
Well,
No, I shouldn't say.
Very, very important.
people do that.
Yeah.
I did not know that November is Diabetes Awareness Month. And now we are having lots of fun here at the Radio Talking Board Network.
Lots of
today.
fun.
It is our fall open house for 2016.
Oh, okay.
And we invite all of our listeners and people who just want to see what we do and how we do it behind the scenes to come on down to Emmanuel, well, it's CHI now, building is medical free, 7101 Newport Avenue. And we are in Suite 205, which is right on the first floor, just past the elevator. We welcome all of us, all the fine people that are interested in seeing what we do here at the Radio Talking Book Network. And now I have a quick little request from our executive director.
They didn't ask us to sing. We're already being shoved aside.
They'd only ask us once.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Well, you haven't won anything in 108 years, and you plan to do it. It's something pretty special indeed. It was a Cubs fan, always have been. Since I grew up, I used to smuggle a transistor radio into school and listen to the Cubs games rather than studying and doing my homework. Anyway, enough of that. It is time now to return to Studio A for the continuation of our reading from Omaha World Herald and Lincoln Journal Star. Here are our stars once again, Deb Everhart and Jack Gibbs.
Thank you, Paul. We're entering the second half of our broadcast this morning. 11:04, we'll start reading from a editorial written by David Ignatius, who's a popular, prominent writer throughout the country. And he works for, and this comes from Washington, D.C., Washington Post newspaper. Donald Trump proclaimed American first on his way to his head-spinning victory in Tuesday's. And the success of that message will rock many foreign capitals, where leaders have feared that Trump would alter the basics of U.S. foreign policy. Making predictions about Trump's foreign policy is difficult, given his lack of experience. But the most likely bet is that as president, he will seek to do what he promised during the campaign in breaking from current U.S. approaches to Russia, the Middle East, Europe, and Asia. Traveling abroad over the past year, I heard concern about Trump's candidacy from senior officials in more than a dozen countries. He was viewed as an inexperienced and unreliable figure who might dismantle traditional U.S. commitments and alliances. Most foreign leaders will be upset that Hillary Clinton, an advocate of traditional U.S. strategy and commitments, lost the race. A Trump foreign policy based on his statements will bring an intense realist focus on U.S. national interest and a rejection of costly U.S. engagements abroad. It will likely bring these changes, namely these. A move to improve relations with combative, assertive Russia. Trump stressed repeatedly during the campaign at some political cost that he will work with the President Putin. I think I'd be able to get along with him, he said in a September TV forum hosted by NBC's Matt Lauer. If he says great things about me, I'm going to say great things about him. I mean, the man has very strong control over a country. Trump also discounted allegations that Russians hackers and meddled in the presidential election. I doubt it, Trump said when asked in an October 19th debate about a statement by Director of National Intelligence James R. Clapper, accusing Russia's senior-most officials of approving hacking of Democratic Party websites. Trump's denial led some Democrats to argue that electing Trump had been Russia's great goal. A joint military effort with Russia and Syrian President Bashar Assad to defeat the Islamic State. Trump proposed this shared campaign during that same debate. If Russia and the U.S. get along well and win over ISIS, that would be good, he said. He offered positive comments about Assad, saying he's just much tougher and much smarter than Clinton, adding that if the opposition should win in Syria, you may very well end up with worse than Assad. Trump also promised repeatedly that he would step up the U.S. military campaign against the Islamic State and replace U.S. generals who were insufficiently combative. God, I didn't know that. It scares me. But he has been vague about what he plans to do in Iraq and Syria. Another thing he may do, a new push for European allies to pay more for their own defense. It's unlikely that Trump will dismantle NATO, as critics charged during the campaign. He said in a debate that Clinton was telling just another lie when she accused him of undermining commitments to defend NATO allies and Asian partners such as Japan and South Korea. But he never retreated from an April 27th speech in which he said, the U.S. must be prepared to let these countries defend themselves, even if that means letting them acquire nuclear weapons. God. Oh my, that scares me even more. In Europe, Trump's victory is likely to reinforce the trend toward politicians expressing similar right-wing and nationalist views. The avatar of this neo-nationalism was the surprise victory of Brexit supporters in June's referendum in Britain. And there are comparable movements in France, Germany, Italy, and Spain. President Trump will have to decide whether to embrace such movements, which could destabilize the European Union. An attempt to alter the terms of trade in Asia by renegotiating trade pacts and forcing China to revalue its currency, it's hard to predict how this combative approach to globalization will play out. Often, Trump's extreme rhetoric and threats against business partners are tactics in which he has famously described as the art of the deal. China, that's already experiencing a bubble economy, might well be vulnerable to U.S. economic pressure. But the most likely outcome of Trump's protectionist rhetoric will be a global economic downturn, many analysts have argued. Trump's campaign was premised on the idea that his approach would make America great again. His presidency will test that proposition. But many analysts argue that by putting America's interests first so nakedly, he may push many U.S. allies in Europe and Asia to make their own deals with a new assertive Russia and a rising China. Undoing globalization is impossible, but undermining America's leadership in that system would be all too easy.
Thank you, Jack. 11:10 is the time, and here are the letters to the editor in the Journal Star. The first one they call Help Forgotten Citizens. Recently, my 70-year-old husband's need for medical care increased to the point that I could no longer care of him at home. Unfortunately, it seems the only place where my husband was accepted with his Medicaid status and dementia needs is one of those forgotten small-town places that house the most severely disabled, both mentally and physically. Lack of proper funding for these facilities naturally leads to the poor physical upkeep and lack of home-like environment these people are forced to endure, but these things do count in places like this. They matter to the often underpaid and overworked staff and to the heartbroken families who have to leave their loved ones there. Besides, many of these patients are mentally alert, but over time become very depressed by their rundown surroundings. Nobody deserves anything but the very best that we can give them right to the very end of our lives. We as their lives, we as a society must do a better job in this area of healthcare. Isn't the idea of triage to provide for the neediest patients first? Sadly, many times we are putting them at the end of the service line. We are hearing much about the homeless, but there is a whole population of homeless barely existing in heartbreaking substandard conditions right under our noses. If you're looking for a place to volunteer, please consider one of these medical establishments. And if you are blessed and you're blessed financially, consider donating to the quality of life of these forgotten citizens, contributed by Teresa A. Thompson, Lincoln. And the other, they only have two, is Pain and Profits from White Clay. I was greatly moved by Marcella Mercer's powerful, poignant story of Pine Ridge Reservation child victims of fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. The story was A Mom for All Ages, October 30th. Mercer's story and fellow UNL Journalism School student Kala Kessler's photos paid well-earned homage, I guess that's homage now, to Nora Bessem of Newell, South Dakota, an angel on earth who, along with her husband, adopted 9 children suffering the ravages of alcohol-caused birth defects. The gritty account of Bessem's heroic efforts to provide a loving family life to these needy children touched my heart, and the costs involved in their medical care astounded me. Medication for just 2 of the children cost $12,000 a month. The reporter found it had cost $3 million to keep one of the children alive for the 3 years of her life so far. Medicare shoulders most of the burden. All that is very depressing to learn, but if you look hard enough, there may be a bright side to the story for someone, namely the booze merchants of the Skid Row village of White Clay, Nebraska, who sell 3.5 million cans of beer yearly to reservation residents. They are making profits. Signed, Bob Copperstone, Wahoo. Here's Jack.
Thank you. Yes, editorial is written by Jonathan H. Hadler, who teaches courses in constitutional, administrative, and environmental law at Case Western University of Law. Wrote this for the Washington Post newspaper. Your candidate got more of the popular vote? Irrelevant. Reviewing the presidential election results, many commentators note that Donald Trump, like several previous Republican presidential candidates, prevailed in the Electoral College without winning the popular vote. This is true, but it's also irrelevant. It's irrelevant legally, of course, because the Constitution provides for the election of a president through the Electoral College, but it's also irrelevant in terms of the democratic legitimacy of the result. In the election concluded Tuesday, Hillary Clinton received more popular votes than Trump. This does not mean, however, that Clinton would necessarily have prevailed in any election that was determined solely by the popular vote. This is because the popular vote total is itself a product of the Electoral College system. As a consequence, we do not know what the result would have been under a popular vote system, let alone whether Clinton would have prevailed. And for this is because the Electoral College system encourages the campaigns and the surrogates and allies to concentrate their efforts on swing states, those states in which electoral votes are up for grabs, at the expense of those states in which one party or the other has no meaningful chance to prevail. The presidential campaigns make no meaningful effort to turn out votes in populous but non-competitive states such as California, New York, and Texas. There's no advantage to running up the score in a state that is solidly in one camp, nor is there much benefit in trying to drive up turnout in pursuit of a hopeless cause. So, for instance, a GOP campaign would invest little in trying to drive up the vote total in Texas, or reducing the margin by which its candidate loses in New York or California, and ditto the Democratic campaign in reverse. Under a popular vote system, on the other hand, every vote in every state would count equally, and campaigns would be likely to devote substantial resources driving up turnout in those same states. We don't have any particular reliable guide as to what vote tallies, which efforts would produce. Voter knowledge as to whether they are in a competitive state may also affect voter behavior, such as the willingness to support a third-party candidate or to cast a protest vote, further altering the result we would see under a different system. What all this means is that when the popular vote is reasonably close, as it was this year, as it was in 2000 and 2004, we can't say with confidence that the candidate who won the popular vote under the electoral system would have won the popular vote under a popular vote system. It's possible, but anything but certain. So while it's true that Clinton won the majority of popular votes cast, we don't know that she was actually the candidate voters would have picked were we to rely on the popular vote. Doggone, we didn't.
11:17. Thank you, Jack.
Yep.
Here's an editorial from the opinion page of the Journal Star. It's their opinion. And they say, we amazing Americans do it again. One of the most important and distinguishing features of American democracy is the peaceful transition of power. It should never be taken for granted. The tradition may be the strongest glue holding the country together in the current era of bitter polarization. In conceding victory to Donald Trump in the presidential race, Hillary Clinton said, "Our constitutional democracy enshrines the peaceful transfer of power. We don't just respect that, we cherish it. It's a strength that allows the great American experiment to take a meandering exploratory course through history. 8 years ago, this country elected for its first African-American president, Barack Obama. 4 years later, he was reelected. On Tuesday, they replaced Obama with a man who promised to undo most of what Obama has done in an upset win that has confounded the political establishment. Yet, in a graceful act, Obama called Trump early Wednesday morning, offering congratulations. Too often, cynics sniff at these acts of graciousness. They should be celebrated, and attention should be paid to the words that came from Trump as he acknowledged that he was the president-elect. Now it is time for America to bind the wounds of division. To all Republicans and Democrats and independents across this nation, I say it is time for us to come together as one united people. It is time. I pledge to every citizen of our land that I will be president of all Americans, and this is so important to me. For those who have chosen not to support me in the past, of which there were a few people, I'm reaching out for your guidance, your help, so that we can work together and unify our country. Trump should be held to these words as much as any promise he has made. There's no doubt that his campaign has emboldened overt racists in America. On too many occasions, Trump himself has voiced bigotry and fomented racial animosity. The presidential campaigns exposed and magnified the division in America. The precarious balance of power is illustrated by the fact that Clinton apparently won the popular vote but lost in the Electoral College. Yet the nation is taking this wrenching change of leadership in stride with only a few protests and scattered acts of vandalism reported around the country, like the messages spray painted on the Nebraska Capitol. Clinton said, "Donald Trump is going to be our president. We owe him an open mind and a chance to lead. Let's take both Clinton and Trump at their word. The critically important work of governing, defending the country, building its streets, highways and bridges, educating children, and so on is done more effectively when Americans work together." Here's Jack.
Very good. It's time to move on from the editorial and public pulse section, letters, into the living section, and we call that living and entertainment, I believe.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's what I'm going to start out with. Interesting article, I believe. It's called, I'll read it. Emily Keating can see only shapes, colors, and shadows. The 14-year-old girl's visual impairment limits her ability to fully enjoy theatrical performances and movies. She recalled a bad experience when she was a third grader during a showing of the musical Junie B. Jones at the Rose Theater. "I watched it like everyone else," she said. "It was hard to see what was going on and to know what was happening." When Keating visits the Rose to see the Jungle Book this weekend, she won't have that problem. The Rose, Orpheum Theater, Omaha Community Playhouse, the Blue Barn Theater, Film Streams, and Circle Theater now have audio description services available for select performances during next week's touring musical White Christmas. Visitors who wear an FM receiver and earpiece will be given live verbal descriptions of costumes, stage action, and body language of characters during gaps in dialogue. The service complements productions by allowing people who are blind or visually impaired to get the full experience out of a performance. According to Lisa Kelly, who's director of the enrichment programs at the Outlook Nebraska Incorporated. There are some 15,000 individuals who are blind or visually impaired in Omaha, and this number is expected to grow rapidly as our population ages, Kelly said. These individuals struggle to fully enjoy the enriching culture our theater community has to offer due to their vision loss. They also miss out on sharing these experiences with friends and family because they do not think they can fully participate. Outlook Nebraska is a nonprofit that advocates for the blind and the visually impaired, helped introduce this service to the Omaha theaters. The idea came from Crystal Platt, who is a vision program coordinator and genetic counselor at Boys Town National Research Hospital. Platt, who is visually impaired, said she has often felt excluded from the performing arts community. I haven't gone to too many live performances because it's difficult to follow the plot line, actors and actresses, she said. Years ago, I saw Mamma Mia. I was so lost, it just wasn't fun at all, and I felt left out of the experience. Platt, who received services from the Outlook of Nebraska, suggested bringing audio descriptive service to Omaha theaters to Kelly of Outlook Nebraska. Kelly reached out to theaters in Omaha to see if they were interested in offering the service. 7 people from the 5 Omaha venues agreed and were trained in July as audio describers in Raleigh, North Carolina. The trainees learned how to speak concisely during live productions and how to describe objectively. In Omaha, those 7 employees described the productions live for visually impaired attendees while wearing an FM transmitter and special mask with a microphone. This technology mutes the sound of the description to audience members who are not wearing the specialty headphones. Outlook Nebraska received 2 grants totaling $30,000 to help cover the cost of the program through the year 2017. The money covered the cost of the training. The grant money also paid for audio description technology, namely 24 portable FM receivers and earpieces for audience members, as well as 2 FM transmitters and masks for the describers. The audio description service is offered at no cost to the patron. The equipment will need maintenance to pay for that, train additional describers, and continue offering this service beyond 2017. Outlook Nebraska will need additional grant money, Kelly said. The Omaha Community Playhouse offered the first audio descriptive service in Omaha during Murder Ballad on October 29th. Not visually impaired, said this device helped explain symbolism in the play Murder Ballad. Platt wore the device when she attended the performance and found it helpful. There are several times when the mom and dad in the show talked to a child, she said. The describer mentioned that there was no actual cast member playing that part. Without the description services, I would have been confused as to why I didn't hear the cast members enter and exit the stage. Mary Noel Chamberlain, age 54 of Ralston, will attend the showing of Jungle Book on Saturday at the Rose Theater. She says she is excited to have a trained audio describer for the performance rather than relying on a family member. It's a lot of hard work to have a family member do it, and then they don't get to enjoy the whole show, said Chamberlain, who is legally blind. To be able to go to an event and not have to worry about family describing it to me is exciting and means I can enjoy it independently. Now, Radio Talking Book did that some years ago. I don't know what happened to it, but anyway, we were involved in that. Maybe we even invented it. I don't know. But anyway, it's a great service that's being offered in this case by the, what's the name of the group? Well, whatever it is. But very interesting, I thought.
I thought so too.
Yeah.
Here's Ask Amy. She says, recovered memory, disrupting marriage. Dear Amy, my husband has become very good friends with a guy I have known for years from my small town. They treasure the friendship and share a love for a certain sport. The friend is going through a divorce. Recently, when I was unable to get a hold of my husband, I reached out to him to ask if he had seen him. We texted a few times that day about a gift I wanted to get my husband for their sport. He advised me to erase the messages. He said he didn't know how my husband would take us texting, no matter how innocent. I told him I couldn't imagine he'd have an issue with it. He replied, "You must have never told him about us." I had a fleeting thought when they started hanging out that I might have gone out on a date with this guy some 25 years ago. I honestly couldn't remember. He said we actually hung out 3 times. Again, I had not remembered a thing, and I admitted this and apologized for having a terrible memory. I am famous for it. The friend said he didn't want to risk the friendship with my husband, and I agreed to delete the innocent text messages. I have been married to my husband for more than 20 years and love him very much. Now I am wondering if I should bring this up. I don't want it to seem like I'm trying to hide anything. I also don't want the friend's ex-wife to mention it to my husband out of anger / annoyance / whatever. How does one even go about telling her husband that she briefly dated his best friend and just remembered it, signed feeling weird? Dear weird. One does not generally tell one's husband that she just remembered going out with his best friend 25 years ago. Why? Because it is of no consequence. However, because this whole strange episode seems to have become the plot of a David Lynch movie, I think you are now forced to basically lay this out for your husband, even at the risk of him assuming there is more to this story than you are saying. In fact, your biggest challenge might be to convince him that there is not actually more to the story than you've reported. Tell him this entire encounter had receded into the mists of time, along with other whole swaths of the 90s, and that you were unaware of it until this person reminded you. You can tell him his friend was very self-conscious about this, and that you only felt weird once he insisted that you delete the innocent text exchange. And the next, dear Amy, I am already dreading the holiday season. I've worked for the same company for 10 years, through thick and thin, transfers, upheavals, chaos, and disruption. The supervisors and management receive quarterly bonuses, but none of us underlings do. Every year, instead of offering a bonus, the company throws a blowout party featuring a ton of booze, music, and ridiculous raffle prizes. The party is very expensive and not at all fun, unless you enjoy getting wasted in front of your colleagues and vomiting next to the dumpster at dawn. 2 years ago, one of the company's guests was arrested for groping a waitress. You get the picture. My supervisor explains that these parties are our bonus. She says that they want to promote a culture of fun. This does not feel fair. I'm not saying they should stop having the parties, but maybe have a less expensive party and give a small year-end bonus to everyone. But of course, I can't tell this company how to spend its money. What do you think about this? Signed, Holiday Dread. Dear Dread, I completely agree with you. In addition to these parties being very expensive, management seems to have mistaken fun for possibly actionable. If someone were to sue this company for drunken accidents or crimes committed during or after this party, the expense could wipe out the bonuses for many years to come. It's too bad that you work for a company that doesn't value you more, but you can't tell them how to spend their money. Here's Jack.
Very good. Thank you, Bill. I was just going through the living section of the newspaper here to find something that might be interesting to you listeners. First one, the headline reads, "Messy garden suits nature just fine." Here's what the article reads. "Cleanliness may be next to godliness, but Mother Nature would prefer you not to overdo it when you're cleaning up the garden. Many beneficial creatures depend on some litter in the landscape. The beautiful black swallowtail butterfly, for example. Its pupa. What's pupa? Is that some kind of?
It's a stage in development of a butterfly, say. It's the.
Okay. The beginning of the.
Yes.
Yeah, I've heard the word or seen the word, but I didn't know.
It's like a little casing around the thing.
Around the body itself or something. Okay, thank you. Yeah, Bill's my nature expert. That's why I asked him.
Yeah.
and everything else too. The beautiful black swallowtail butterfly, for example, its pupa all winters at the base of the parsley or dill plant where its caterpillar died during the growing season. Cutting these spent herbs to the ground and removing them will inadvertently remove swallowtail pupae too. Don't rake up all the leaves in flower beds. The fritillary butterfly needs a leaf litter for winter protection, And like most Midwest butterflies, the adult emerges from its pupa in autumn, but then requires a protected spot to hide from the winter's cold. The bumblebee queen, too, overwinters with the protection of leaf litter. I used to have no qualms about removing dead stalks from the garden after frost. Then I learned that some important native bees spend the winter as pupa. I'm not sure that's how you pronounce it, but it's spelled
Pretty close.
Pupa.
Yeah, I think.
It's spelled P-U-P-A, okay. And that's made in the hollow stems of pithy plants such as raspberry, cane, sunflower stems, and Siberian iris stalks. If you want to tidy up but still help the bees, consider allowing some of these stems to stand in a back corner. If you don't tolerate any dead stems remaining in the garden, you could purchase a pre-made bee house that has bundles of bamboo, reed, or other hollow stems for nesting. Be sure to follow sanitation directions to minimize problems with the bee parasites and the diseases. Much has been said about choosing flowering plants to attract butterflies and bees, but all too little is mentioned about how to help these insects survive our winters. You wouldn't want to smother the lawn with fall leaves, of course, or leave diseased plants in the garden, but you can help Mother Nature by leaving healthy plants standing and letting the wind blow some of the leaves into your garden beds. Decaying leaves not only help protect hibernating insects, but provide many other advantages as well. They boost the soil with nutrients, organic matter, and beneficial microorganisms. Timber soil is in demand for just this reason. Namely, it is soil harvested from under trees where the leaves have been allowed to fall and decompose naturally. If you let the leaves fall in your own yard, stay tucked in around the garden plants, you'll be building rich soil without cost or effort. There's one more reason to encourage the leaf litter, namely this. It's a favorite place for birds to forage. Accumulated leaves are a popular hangout for ground-feeding birds, which scratch in the leaves and turn up seeds, fruits, and insects to eat. That's very technical for me.
Yeah. Thank you, Jack. Ask Dr. K. He says simple steps prevent hospital delirium. Dear Dr. K, the last time my mother was in the hospital, she experienced delirium. State of health, it is likely she will be hospitalized again. Is there anything I can do to prevent her from becoming delirious the next time? The reply, dear reader, about half of people over 65 experience delirium, a sudden change in mental status during a hospital stay. This troubling experience increases their risk for cognitive impairment and dementia after their release. It's easy to understand why hospitalization can be disorienting. Patients' daily routines are overturned. Suddenly, they're dealing with a stream of people they probably never met before. Because of noise and being awakened for a treatment or a test, it's hard to sleep through the night. Medications can also affect their mental state. As we age, it becomes even more difficult to adapt to these disruptions. Dr. Sharon Inouye is a professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School. Decades ago, she recognized that delirium in older patients isn't inevitable. She and her colleagues designed a delirium prevention program called the Hospital Elder Life Program, HELP. HELP identifies patients at risk for delirium and provides them with special care to minimize the main risk factors for delirium during their hospital stay. These risk factors include sleep deprivation, immobility, visual impairment, hearing impairment, and dehydration. Help doesn't just reduce the incidence of delirium during hospitalization. It also helps prevent falls, mental and physical declines, and the need for nursing home care. That's because it is during spells when they are delirious that people climb out of bed or slip and fall and fracture bones. If your mother is hospitalized again, ask whether the hospital has a delirium prevention program. If not, there are several things you can do to help. And so the one is keep communication simple. In a calm, reassuring voice, state one fact at a time as you have learned the facts from the doctors and nurses. Do not overwhelm or overstimulate your mother with too much information. Help orient the person. If necessary, remind your mother where she is and why. Be subtle about it. Don't ask her if she knows where she is and why she's there. Instead, make comments like, I sure like the nice big windows here at General Hospital, don't you? Or you're going to feel so much better when the doctors here at General Hospital take out your gallbladder, Mom. Try a hands-on approach. Gently massage or stroke your mother's arm or back if she finds that soothing. Be a companion. Stay in the hospital as much as possible. Arrange with family and friends to visit in shifts so someone can be present around the clock. Work with the staff if allowed. Encourage your mother to eat and drink. Accompany her on walks down the hospital corridor. Be vigilant if you detect signs of possible delirium, confusion, memory problems, personality changes. Discuss them with the medical staff as soon as you can. Family and friends are often the first to notice subtle changes. And that's Dr. K, and here's Dr. Jack.
Here's some Heloise letter. This comes from a reader to Heloise. Here's what this reader says. Customer service is so important. General merchandise stores sell the exact same merchandise. It's usually the service that makes the difference. As a customer, please pass along my hints to store employees. Keep the sales floor clean and neat. I know customers can make a mess. Please don't engage in personal conversations with coworkers that I can overhear. And please don't text on your cell phone when I'm asking you a question. Monitor the fitting room. Politely tell me the rules, as some stores have different rules. Make sure all items have their correct tags on them. Be patient, as the new chip reader cards take longer to process. Thanks for letting me vent my complaints. Signed, a reader. This is the answer that Heloise gives. She says, most stores want to make the customer happy, but there's always a few workers who stand out for good service. Tell them thanks. Signed, Heloise. This letter comes from TC in Ohio, and here's what TC writes. Dear Heloise, I live alone, and my friends tease me about how I keep my house. But my shower, I have to say, is a lot cleaner since I learned this hint, namely this. I leave my shower door open for use. I leave my shower door open after use. This allows the water to evaporate and not turn into mold so easily. I also run a squeegee over the walls every other day to further cut down on yuckiness. Okay, the next letter comes from Sam in Texas. Dear Heloise, I love the vintage suitcases from the 1960s. Some of my suitcases are designer and pricey. To protect them, I preserve their shape. I store my off-season clothes in them, and I throw in some sachets or use fabric softener sheets just for freshness. Dear readers, this is Heloise's reply to that suggestion. A moistened coffee filter works wonders over a plate or a bowl of food in the microwave. It keeps the moisture in the food, not escaping it. Next letter, dear Heloise, if you find a spray pill at the bottom of your purse or a drawer somewhere, you can go to the computer and look up what the medication is. There is a sequence of numbers printed on the pills. Type that number into the computer. It will tell you what the pill is. I wouldn't use a pill, certainly, because you don't know how old it is, and it's probably dirty, but at least you will know what the medication is. Pam in Bakersfield writes that letter. And Heloise said, you're right. Do not take a pill you find in your purse or wherever. It's not safe for many, many reasons. Next letter, let me see. Heloise has a PS, which looks very helpful. Well, on the subject of that, if you have grandchildren or small children, be aware that they may find some pills at the bottom of your purse. Next letter comes from John from Hobart, Indiana. Dear Heloise, opening water and soda bottles for the first time can be hard, especially if you have pain issues like arthritis. I found that wrapping a rubber band around the lid helps a lot. Just a few twists make it easier to grab. Wrapping a rubber band around the lid, okay. And that's for soda bottles, water and soda bottles, okay.
Okay.
I'm trying to imagine that.
That'll work for me, I guess.
We use some of the space. We use pliers, screwdrivers, hammers. Some of these things are really untight.
Oh, yes.
I think about half the time my wife, she'll come, Jack, here, I can't open this when you, and if I'm sitting down, I'll try. By many times I have to go out to the kitchen, put the container on a counter, put my full weight on top of it and turn. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean,
There's got to be a better way.
I don't know if there's a contest among these people or what. Anyway, those are the letters, Heloise.
Okay. In business, and this is the Journal Star, GM is laying off 2,000 at 2 car plants. Falling demand for cars is forcing General Motors to lay off more than 2,000 workers indefinitely at 2 assembly plants in Ohio and Michigan starting in January. The company says it will suspend the third shifts at factories in Lordstown, Ohio, near Cleveland, and in Lansing, Michigan, because customers are shifting from cars to SUVs and trucks. About 1,250 workers will be furloughed at the Lordstown plant, which makes the Chevrolet Cruze compact car. Another 840 will be idled at the Lansing Grand River factory, which makes the Chevy Camaro muscle car and the Cadillac ATS and CTS luxury cars. GM says the moves are being made to align production to demand for the cars. Excuse me. Also, snowflakes back on the Starbucks cups from New York. Snowflakes, Santa Claus, and reindeer are returning to Starbucks holiday cups this year after last year's more subdued red cups caused an uproar from critics who said the chain was part of a so-called war on Christmas. In all, 13 different cups will head to stores around the world Thursday. 11 of them will be available in U.S. shops. The cups were designed by customers who uploaded pictures of their designs on Instagram last year, the company said Wednesday. Starbucks has released holiday cups every year since 1997. The outcry over the 2015's plainer red cup grew after now President-elect Donald Trump suggested boycotting the chain. The company was surprised by last year's controversy, CEO Howard Schultz said at an event in New York on Wednesday where the designs were displayed. It's just a cup, he joked. Here's Jack.
Thank you, Bill. Here's a business brief from the World Herald. Shifting demand from cars to trucks and SUVs is forcing General Motors to lay off more than 2,000 workers indefinitely at 2 assembly plants in Ohio and Michigan, starting in January. The company said Wednesday it will suspend the third shifts at factories in Lordstown, Ohio, and in Lansing, Michigan, because of the market change, which is growing and shows no sign of abating. Starbucks news. Snowflakes, Santa Claus, and reindeer are returning to Starbucks holiday cups this year, after last year's more subdued red cups caused an uproar from critics who said the chain was part of a so-called war on Christmas. In all, some 13 different cups will hit stores around the world today. 11 of them will be available here in this country, shops. The cups were designed by customers who uploaded pictures of their designs on Instagram last year. Starbucks has released holiday cups every year since 1997. That's 20 years. Huh. EpiPen. I'm not sure where EpiPen is. Anyway, there's a controversy. Drug maker Mylan Incorporated swung to a third quarter loss, mainly due to a big settlement for overcharging the federal government for its controversial EpiPen, which is the emergency allergy injector whose price Mylan has repeatedly jacked up. Results missed Wall Street's expectations, and Mylan reduced its 2016 profit forecast. In early October, Wyoming said it would pay $465 million to settle allegations that it overbilled Medicaid for years for its life-saving EpiPen. On Wednesday, Wyoming reported of a third quarter loss of just under $120 million, or 23 cents per share, after reporting a $429 million profit in the same period a year ago. And this is an article about a British firm. It says a British futures trader pleaded guilty yesterday during his first U.S. court appearance since helping to trigger a 2010 flash crash from his parents' suburban London home that wiped billions of dollars off the value of U.S. stocks. Under a plea deal, Navigator Singh Serrano pleaded guilty in a Chicago courtroom to wire fraud and spoofing. Spoofing.
Yeah.
That's like lying, spoofing.
Kind of
Kind
fooling
of.
around. In sports, here's the NUN area news from the Journal Star. Husker diver Filipchik wins Big Ten honor again. Nebraska senior Anna Filipchik was named Big Ten Diver of the Week for a second consecutive week. Filipchik swept the diving event in a duel with Kansas and set a Devaney Sports Center 6-dive total on the 1-meter dive. In bowling, number 1, Nebraska travels to Kenosha, Wisconsin for the Warhawk Invitational on Friday through Sunday. The field's 18 teams include 13 that are ranked, with the top 5 teams in attendance. The Huskers finished second at the KAT Clash last weekend and won the Warhawk Invitational last season. In cross country, the Nebraska cross country teams will run at the NCAA Midwest Regional on Friday in Iowa City, Iowa. Wyatt McGuire has led the Husker men for the last 2 meets, and Anna Peer continued her return to form with the women's top finish at the Big Ten Championships. The women's race is at 11 a.m. and the men at noon. Doan's Marissa DeWispelier was named to the Great Plains Athletic Conference Runner of the Year. DeWispelier, an Aquinas graduate, repeated as GPAC individual champion last week. Last week's championship, Concordia Junior Emily Siebert also was named first team and earned an individual berth to the NAIA Cross Country National Championships. Siebert was 9th at the GPAC Championships. And in soccer, Nebraska Wesleyan forward Jake Kennedy, a Lincoln Southeast grad, was named second team All-Iowa Intercollegiate Athletic Conference. Kennedy led the conference with 9 assists in only 12 matches. Will Weber and Brady Blazek, also Southeast grads, and Alex Day were honorable mention. 4 NWU women were named honorable mention. Forward Caitlin Blosser and midfielder Caitlin Sullivan, Shannon Giron, and Natalie Graves. The Creighton men are number 24 in the NSCAA coaches poll. The Blue Jays play at number 22 Providence on Thursday in a Big East tournament semifinal. Here's Jack.
Thank you, Bill.
Yes, sir.
Here's some football news. We play Minnesota this coming Saturday at 6:30 in the evening. I hate these night games.
I can't make them.
I'm an afternoon guy, I guess. Okay. Anyway, there's the article. Nebraska coach Mike Riley isn't asking for a great diversity from Nebraska's run game right at the moment. After prolonged struggles to move the ball on the ground, the Huskers have averaged just under 4 yards per carry and just under 135 per game over the last 4 contests. Riley would settle for having a couple of running plays that are reliable, plays that set up a manageable second down. They don't get blasted right at the line of scrimmage. 2 identity runs that we can repeat better throughout the ball game that look good, Riley said Monday. 2 good running plays, something that might work in the first quarter. In the first quarter, where Nebraska averages just under 4 yards per carry, and lasts through the fourth quarter, where Nebraska averages just over 5 yards per carry. Nebraska would like one of those identity plays to be an inside zone run. It's a staple of just about any offense in which the offensive line reads the alignment of the defense and blocks linemen and linebackers accordingly. And the running backs pick whatever hole emerges once the linemen engage the defense. But that run, like many others, have been hit and miss, according to the offensive coordinator, Danny Lunsford. We're an inside zone team, he said Wednesday, and we haven't always been very good at that. When Nebraska can't hit that most basic play, or it can't locate an identity elsewhere, it affects pretty much the entire offense. Better when it was better than when it has the threat of play action, perhaps doesn't produce as many open receivers. The wide out jet sweep or tight end around a wicked curveball late last season hasn't been quite as effective. You're always looking for that in the game of, okay, this has been good, or let's get back to that, or let's repeat that run. That's what's been tough, because sometimes we've hit something and then got stopped a couple of times. You're looking for that run you can hang your hat on it, and it's a go to call, and you're going to get yards out of it. You're not going to lose yards, but we've been so up and down that way in the run game for a few games now. So I think it's important. This week, the Huskers' run game has received at least some welcome news. The offensive line appears as whole and healthy as it has been in many weeks. On Tuesday, in the brief time reporters get to watch practice, offensive line coach Mike Cavanaugh had his full load of linemen practicing. Last week, it was far more sparse. Tanner Farmer and David Knievel were out, as was at least one freshman, Mac Farniok, who is redshirting. But Tuesday, he had all of those guys back, plus Gerald Foster, believed lost for the season with a torn MCL. Foster, a sophomore from Lincoln Southeast, was going to be the starting left guard before the injury. He was replaced by Sam Hahn, the healthiest of the linemen this season. Cavanaugh said Foster could play in spot duty this week. Overall, the coach said he hadn't enjoyed this healthy group since August practices. Minnesota's pressure-heavy style, blitzes on both runs and passes, is a kind of defense that has been given the Huskers trouble in recent weeks. But Langsdorf said he's committed to making the run game work. We're trying every game, he said. It hasn't been easy at times. We're not abandoning it. It's important to keep trying to do it.
Thank you, Jack. Red report. Here's part of it anyway. Band back together. With Foster back in practice this week, along with Tanner Farmer and David Knievel, Nebraska has had its full complement of first-string offensive linemen together this week for the first time since August. That lineup consists of Nick Gates at left tackle, Foster at left guard, Dylan Utter at center, Farmer at right guard, and Knievel at right tackle. Sam Hahn said, "Hey, the band's back together," Cavanaugh said. "It's good to have them all back and out there working." Farmer, who has started 7 games at right guard, injured his ankle early in the October 29th game at Wisconsin and sat out against Ohio State. He's expected to return against Minnesota. He's a physical guy, so having him back will be good, Cavanaugh said. Knievel, an 8-game starter, sat out the Ohio State game and still may not be ready this week, Cavanaugh said. Cole Conrad, a sophomore walk-on from Fremont, has responded well in Knievel's absence. "I can't say enough about the guy," Cavanaugh said. "He's going to be a really good player for us. He's growing and growing every week. Just this experience this season has been good. I'm excited about him and his future." And running back rotation. Terrell Newby has carried the load in the backfield during the Big Ten play. The Husker senior running back has carried the ball 52 times over the past 3 games. Divine Ozigbo, Mikhail Wilbon, and Trey Bryant have combined for 19 carries in that stretch. Offensive coordinator Langsdorf said the Huskers have had to go away from a true rotation because of injuries to Ozigbo and the offensive line. Early in the year, it was a good rotation that we had, but we haven't been able to do that with the injuries as much, Langsdorf said. The other part of it, but I think you've seen some good, hard yards for Terrell, and he's kind of been the number 1 guy, Langsdorf added. And finally, eyes on the Gophers. Nebraska will clash with the Minnesota defense that's only giving up 3.3 yards per rush, and Langsdorf sees a big challenge for his offense. They are physical, he said, a lot of run pressure, a lot of overall pressure with this defense. Minnesota junior defense tackle Steve Richardson jumps out to Langsdorf on film. He's a run stopper, he said, of the 6', 300-pounder. He's not real tall, but he's a load. He's going to be a challenge to block. Here's Jack.
And you just read the time before about some Creighton soccer tournament, or
No.
okay? I wasn't listening, but I thought I heard.
Oh, sometimes we're
Something
looking
like that.
for the next thing we're going to read. And
Yeah, right. Yeah, okay. I'll read this then. Okay, the soccer tournament that Creighton is part of. Creighton didn't have to wait long to avenge a stinging loss. 11 days after a double overtime defeat to Xavier, the Blue Jays scored twice in the closing minutes for a 3-1 win over the Musketeers in the first round of the Big East tournament Sunday. Now, Creighton gets a shot at more payback 12 days after the 1-0 loss to Providence. The 24th ranked Blue Jays traveled to face the number 22 Friars in the semifinals at 6 o'clock on Thursday, which I guess is today. It's a little bit of a mission. It's a little bit of a mission, Coach Elmore Bolowich said of avenging defeats. Providence stole a game from us here. Now we want to steal one from them. The winner advances to Sunday's final against the winner between Butler and Villanova. Victory at Omaha helped Providence clinch the Big East regular season title for the first time in program history. Julian Gressel, who scored the only goal in that meeting with Creighton, was named the conference's co-offensive player of the year, while Colin Miller was selected the co-goalkeeper of the year with Creighton's Alex Kapp. Gressel led the conference with 27 points, 11 goals and 5 assists was how that was gotten. Miller leads Division I in save percentage, 91, and goals against average, which is .360. The Friars also bring an 8-game winning streak into the contest. Providence is a very, very disciplined, hard-working team, Bolowich said. We have to be ready for a battle. It's a knockout stage. Anything can happen. Bolowich's bunch is getting used to playing win or go home matches. The Jays, who are 10-5, downed Georgetown 3-0 in last Thursday's regular season finale to earn a spot in the tournament before beating Xavier. And Creighton is finding offense just in time. Blue Jays scored 6 goals in 7 October games when they struggled to a 2-4 record, but they found the back of the net 6 times the past 2 games. Junior Ricky Lopez Lespin has had 2 goals against Georgetown in the game-winning penalty kick against Xavier. Lopez Espin had 6 goals in Creighton's last 9 games after scoring twice in the first 9 games. I looked at myself in the mirror and I knew I could give more, said Lopez Espin, who scored 8 goals combined in his first 2 seasons with Creighton. It's kind of a mindset to keep pushing, not to give up. Senior Riggs Lennon leads Creighton with 10 goals. Miles Engans is third with 4. He had 2 goals in Sunday's win over Xavier. The Blue Jays averaged 1.78 goals per match, and the Division I was just over 17 shots per match. Well, you know what the clock says here, Bill? It says it's 12 o'clock noon.
Yes, it does.
This happens every Thursday about the same time.
It sure does.
168 hours from, no, 168 hours in a week.
Oh,
And we're less 2 because we start 10, so it's 166.
I'll be darned. Okay.
That's a lot of math.
math.
Anyway, enough of my nonsense.
Enjoy the afternoon.
Yeah, enjoy the afternoon, enjoy the rest of the week, and we'll talk to you again next time.
And thank you both very, very much. And we are enjoying welcoming people to our open house. And the open house will be running throughout the day, throughout the afternoon. So you're all invited to come and watch us as we work here at the Radio Talking Book Network.
Whistle while we work.
Nebraska. We've been proudly serving our blind and visually impaired listeners for over 40 2 years. The Radio Talk Report Network is
We've got a lot of
brought to you
goodies out there.
Well, the goodies?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, oh,
Cookie